Consulting presents the Aurical podcast with Anton Marshall. Hello and welcome to the Aurical podcast. My name is Anton Marshall. Today we're talking about something interesting in the legal stream of things. We're talking to Andrew Taylor and Carl Torrington out of a company called Lexnove. And we're about to tell you a little bit of what they do. But first, welcome guys. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, guys. Well, glad to be on the Aurical. It's our debut, so we're excited to chat to you.
Fantastic. Okay, now Lexnove is a new approach for people to find legal help with legal issues. In a nutshell, what is the thinking behind it, and if you can give a very basic explanation of what it is.
So, Anton, I think coming from the legal environment ourselves, both Carl and myself are ex-practicing attorneys, or as we like to refer to it, recovering attorneys. We identified a number of inefficiencies in the legal environment that we sought to attack through the business model that is Lexnove. Conventionally, there's an hourly-based charge-out rate, and you have no idea as a client of a legal firm what your legal cost exposure is going to be. So what we sought to do is to fix that cost exposure by harnessing only fixed-price proposals from our panel of service providers. And to give your listeners a little bit of insight into the Lexnove business model, in essence, what we do is the user, which traditionally has been a small to medium enterprise, so think startups, entrepreneurs, guys who have a little bit of disposable income for legal spend, come onto the platform with their legal issue. And then harnessing our expertise as legal professionals, we coach them through the creation of a project brief. That project brief is then circulated to our panel of pre-vetted and certified experts who are subject matter experts, which I think is a really important factor for anyone seeking legal services, and that is to tap into subject matter expertise as opposed to just a generalist approach that many legal professionals advocate. Once the legal professionals have received that project brief, they're able to propose on a fixed price basis to do the legal work. The user is then placed in a position where they're able to choose their service provider on the basis of the price that the proposal comes in at, the legal pedigree of the service provider, as well as, to the extent that it's relevant, the geographic proximity and legal pedigree of the service provider. In addition to that, obviously, there is an inbuilt mechanism for previous users of the attorneys to leave ratings and reviews of the attorney. So what you have is the formation of a far more organically created and informed decision point for the consumer to make their buying decision.
Yes, that's exceptionally interesting in this case, putting a lot of choice into the hands really of the client, if you will. What was the thinking behind that? I mean, what inspired that kind of approach to providing the service for you?
Well, essentially, as Andrew briefly touched on before, there are two main inefficiencies in it all. One being the hourly rate, which we feel essentially looks to reward the inefficient and lazy. The other is how to source an attorney. Often we've found that members of the public do not really know how to source an attorney efficiently. So what they'll normally do, for example, is go to their mother who had a great divorce attorney 4 years prior, who will refer them onto this attorney who's got great knowledge in divorce, but in the area that you need, which is corporate and commercial legal services, possibly in this instance, they don't really have the real knowledge. So we essentially bring that marketplace to the consumer without them having to leave their office or their home or whatever the case may be.
What does the early stage assessment entail? You explained on your website, for example, that you have the expertise in-house as Lexnove to actually take a look at the case concerned and then try to actually advise client or perhaps inform about the kinds of decisions or options that the client might have.
So it doesn't go as far as advice. What we normally do is flesh out, for example, if a client needs a shareholders agreement, we'll gather the required information from them that needs to be inserted into the shareholders agreement, because often clients don't have that full knowledge when initially approaching attorneys. So we make it easier for the attorneys by virtue of the information that we collect. What we don't do is go as far as giving advice. We may give certain suggestions, but what is quite nice is through having many attorneys who are going to submit proposals, you often have differing views from different attorneys, which once again creates a lot more power in the hands of the consumer to make a more informed decision as to which approach might best suit them.
Fine. How do you combat a perception or possible perception amongst clients to say that, okay, fine, I'm not at an hourly rate now, I'm getting a fixed rate. Can I really be guaranteed of the best type of quality representation?
So, Anton, that's an interesting question, and it is something that we have addressed as far as a number of our consumers have been concerned. And the way that we've sought to ensure the quality of the service providers that are on the platform is to source our service providers very, very carefully. And we've done that by manually recruiting the majority of our service providers to date. And in addition to that, we also reject up to 80% of the applications of service providers that we do get. And then when we're looking at the service providers that we enlist onto the platform, what we've sought to do is to ensure that they are ex-name brand firms. So you've got this aspect of derivative credibility where they've got the intellectual capacity and expertise of having trained in some of the bigger named firms in South Africa, yet for whatever reason they've left that big law environment and branched out on their own to their own unique, their niche or boutique firms. So that's the way that until the organic user rating and review system comes into its own, by virtue of having sufficient ratings and reviews, that's how we've sought to guarantee the quality of our service providers. And obviously, our loyalty lies to the consumer. So where we do receive any complaints or issues from service providers, we owe no loyalty to the service providers as such. Our loyalty really is to the consumer. Although having said that, the product that Lexnove provides is in effect the service providers. So it's in our interest to ensure that the service providers are of the highest quality.
Absolutely. Now, as a person, as a layperson, how do I make use of your service? Is it a subscription service that I do? In other words, how do I pay to benefit from your service?
So at the moment, Anton, we're entirely web-based as far as the URL lexnove.co.za is concerned. But in subsequent iterations of the platform, we will be introducing a mobile application. But the cost to the user exists in the sweet spot between the savings that our free market economics process, which is something that I haven't yet touched on and I will elaborate on now, because of the fact that each of the attorneys is able to see the average prices of the other submissions on the project brief, it encourages free market competitiveness. So you have this undercutting of the prices so that you achieve a value-based approach to the legal service as opposed to some arbitrary construction of an hourly rate. Now, Lexnove's value proposition exists in this spot between the savings that creates and the price that the user ends up paying. So we charge a 10% fee of whatever the successful proposal is that goes ahead.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And as you said, it even enhances, from your side, the interest that you have in your service providers providing that great service and that value service in terms of pricing as well as service. That's actually quite brilliant. And as you said, it's a free market approach to legal services. It's quite unique.
Completely. So, I mean, we're quite excited to bring innovation to the legal environment, which, in all honesty, is something that hasn't really seen innovation since the abandonment of forehead judicial wigs.
Someone's going to be asking, are there limitations to the kinds of legal services that your service providers can provide? You know, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but, you know, clearly this would cover sort of domestic law issues or civil issues, disputing contracts and traffic fines and those kinds of things. But does it go as far as criminal law, murder trials, stuff like that?
Well, at this point, we've tried to keep it as close to our skill set as possible. Looking at only corporate and commercial legal services at this point in time, we're looking to capture that beachhead as a market, and over time, look at dealing in other forms of legal services of which we might not have the relevant expertise in, but we'd look to get on personnel who have the relevant expertise to assist with the early case assessments in those fields of law.
Fantastic. All right, so what do people do? How do they find out more about you, and where do they go, and how do they get hold of you?
So we're on all the social media platforms, to be honest. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Lexnove, as well as our URL www.lexnove, that's lexnove.co.za, and you can get hold of me on 081-811-5247, and of course our Twitter handle is @Lexnove.
Brilliant, guys! I think it's a great idea. I really think it brings an interesting palette of options to people in need of legal services. Carl Torrington, Andrew Taylor of Lexnove, thanks very much for your time today, and good luck with the venture. It sounds like it could really benefit lots of people.
Thanks very much, Anton. Appreciate it.
You have been listening to the Aurical podcast, brought to you by Aurical Consulting, www.auricconsulting.co.za.